What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Where Is. I hope everyone is having an amazing day. So today I wanted to come on here and discuss an unsolved murder case with you guys. Now, this case really frustrates me because there's clearly an obvious suspect in the case. However, the case does still remain unsolved, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into the case. So today we will be discussing the unsolved murder and disappearance of Kiera Bergman. Kiera Bergman was born on July 18th in 1999, and she grew up in El Cajon, California. She was from a close-knit family, and her family described her as someone who was kind-hearted and multi-talented. Her mother, Kirsten Bragg, says that she was an amazing young woman and that she was artistic, creative, and outgoing. Her sister Brady says that her and her sister were close and that Kiera was a free spirit and was always happy. According to her father, Chris, she had a bigger-than-life heart and says that she would do anything for anybody. So when Kiera graduated high school, she received a grant to attend a cosmetology school. Her family says that she always had an interest in doing hair and would always watch hair videos. She even talked about wanting to give free haircuts to the homeless after receiving her cosmetology license. So it was November in 2017 and Kiera meets 22-year-old John Clark. Now, according to her mother, a friend of Kiera's had actually set up a Tinder account for her, and this is how her and John met. She talked about John to her family and talked about how much she liked him and that he was a good person. So fast forward to March of 2018, and at this point, Kiera and John had been dating for 4 months now, and she decides that she wants to move in with him. So she quits cosmetology school and leaves California, and she moves to Glendale, Arizona with John, which is where he used to live. Now her family says that they all were surprised of her decision to up and move to Arizona. They said that she only had one friend that lived there, so she didn't exactly have any support there except for a friend and John. So she moves to Arizona, and just 2 weeks after moving, John breaks up with Kiera. Now we know she left her entire life behind and even quit cosmetology school to move to Arizona with him, and he just breaks up with her 2 weeks later. But Kiera didn't let this stop her, and she moves in with her best friend Destiny from high school that was living in Arizona, and they stayed at the Indigo Creek Apartments located on 14221 North 51st Avenue. Now, Kiera's mom says that she was proud of her. She says that she had a good job in her own apartment, so she was definitely not letting the breakup affect her, and she kept her life going. So again, she decides to move to Arizona in March. John breaks up with her 2 weeks after moving, and around mid-June, Kiera and John actually reconcile their relationship and he moves in with Kiera. So she tells her family that she is back in a relationship with John, and of course her family had their concerns, and she tells them that he has changed and that he was working on things. So on Monday, August 6th, her friend Destiny makes a call to her mother and informs her that she hadn't seen Kiera in 2 days. She also informs her mother that she hadn't shown up to work as well. Now, her family says that she would never just not show up to work, and immediately they knew that something was obviously just not right, and her best friend and roommate Destiny calls the Phoenix Police Department and reports Kiera missing. The last time that she was seen was on August 4th, just 2 days prior. Also on August 4th, Destiny had gotten a text message at 1:57 p.m. from Kiera. Now, in the text, Kiera says, "Girl, my phone is about to die, but I'm effing done with John. I met this guy a couple days ago when I went to the store and I asked him to come pick me up, so I'm just chilling with him at his house. I'll call you when I get a charger. And make sure John leaves!" Now, her mother says that the text just didn't sound like something Kiera would do. She didn't believe that she would just up and leave with some random guy that she just met. Her family says not only was the text suspicious, they said that the way she wrote the text was also suspicious. Her family says that Kiera wasn't a big texter, so 9 times out of 10, her text wouldn't have been more than 2 lines, and her father says that she used abbreviations. Now, this was obviously a pretty long text that she sent Destiny, and I don't believe any abbreviations were used. Now, in the text, she states she left to meet up with the guy she met at the store. A lot of times, detectives will throw out the possibility that she could have just left on her own free will, but this didn't seem to be the case for Kiera. It was discovered that she had left behind her purse, car keys, and her credit cards, so something definitely was not adding up. Now, her family attempted to try calling Kiera, but her phone had actually been turned off. So the next day after she was reported missing, her family drives 5 hours from El Cajon, California to Glendale, Arizona. They were hanging up flyers, gathering people to search for Kiera. Her sister also created a Facebook page for her, just doing everything they could as quickly as they could because her family knew that the more days that would pass, the harder it would be for them to find her. So a week goes by and there's still no activity from Kiera, and on Saturday, August 11th, her family and loved ones hold a vigil for Kiera.
We are just being flooded with messages and people telling us that they're praying for us and praying that she comes home safe.
I just miss my sister, and I want her to come home.
Her neighbors in Glendale and close friends she made in the few short months she's been here all came out to show their support.
This is a vigil of hope, okay? The word vigilant means to be watchful, and that's the root word of the word vigil.
Her family is pleading for a break in the case.
Kiera, if you're wherever you are, if you can hear this, if you can see it or hear it, just know that we are doing everything we can and fighting so hard to find you. We are looking everywhere for you.
Now, according to her family, they said that they actually started to notice a change in Kiera right before she disappeared. They said that she went from being a happy person to not really connecting with them like she used to. She kept more things to herself and they didn't really see her much. Her sister says that John would even speak for Kiera if someone asked her something and that he pretty much had to know her every move and where she was at all times. Her sister also says that Kiera informed her that He wouldn't even let her go to the grocery store by herself, and he always had to be with her. Now, police did track down John and question him. He tells police that he actually saw her the same day that she disappeared, which again was on August 4th. He also says that Kiera had sent him a text at 10:27 that morning, and she asked him if he could pick her up from work because she wasn't feeling well. Now, it's later revealed in court documents that Kiera was discussing with a coworker before being picked up that she may have been pregnant. So John heads to go pick her up, and he says that he got to her job at 10:36, and then he says he brought her back to the apartment. He says that once they got back to the apartment, they began to argue. He tells her that he had been thinking about moving in with his aunt in Texas. He tells police that she stormed out of the apartment, and he says that he hasn't heard from her since. But detectives don't believe that John is telling the true story, so they asked him to take a polygraph test, and when they asked him, John actually refuses to take the test, which of course doesn't make him look good. So detectives had a search warrant to search his car, and what they find is pretty disturbing. They discover over 20 California IDs in his vehicle, and they all belonged to different people as well as items of forgery. Now, her father says that he actually wasn't shocked by this discovery because he knew that something was off about John. He says that all the posts that he would post on the internet were of him with drugs and just overall not the most positive things to post on the internet, and her family says that once Kiera went missing, John basically deleted all of his questionable posts from the internet. Now, police do end up arresting John on August 17th and is charged with 22 counts of aggravated identity theft as well as 2 counts of forgery with a $25,000 bond. Her mother says that she knew that John either had something to do with her disappearance or he knew what happened to her. Her father says that they actually didn't speak for a couple of months because he tried to warn Kiera that John just wasn't a good guy. So on August 15th, just 2 days before he was arrested on the 17th, he does a media interview where he talks about what he says actually happened. He says how August 4th was his birthday and that he was sad because they didn't really have any plans, and he says that him and Kiera started to argue. Kiera got upset and that she left the apartment. He says that he was messaging her, trying to get her to come back to the apartment, but he wasn't getting a response from her. He says that he was messaging her the next day as well as her friend Destiny and still wasn't getting a response, and he says that he told Destiny that if Kiera didn't show up for work, then they should file a missing persons report. He also says that the moment police encountered him, they treated him like a suspect. He also says during the media interview that he had nothing to do with her disappearance and that he loves her with all his heart and says that he wants her to come home. Now, her family says that he seemed more concerned about his birthday and not really having plans on his birthday than Kiera actually being missing. He also makes a fairly long post to his Instagram where he basically tells the same story of what happened and how he would never do anything negative to put her in harm's way. So, just to refresh your memory of the timeline, the last time that she was seen was on August 4th. The last person to see her was John on August 4th. Her friend Destiny reported her missing on August 6th. On August 15th is when John did the media interview, and on the 17th is when he was charged with the 22 counts of aggravated identity theft and the 2 counts of forgery. So at this point, it had been 2 weeks since she had disappeared, and still there were no leads as to where Kiera could be until one day on September 3rd in 2018, a cyclist discovers human remains about 50 miles outside of town on an isolated highway in Buckeye, Arizona, and the cyclist immediately calls the police. Now, unfortunately, just 2 days later, the remains were identified as Kiera. Now, her family says that they will never forget the day that they received the phone call from detectives that her body was discovered. Now, I don't believe the autopsy reports have been released to determine her exact cause of death, but it was obvious that now detectives were dealing with a homicide. With this discovery, detectives turned their attention back to John, considering he was the last person to have reportedly seen Kiera. Now we know that John was arrested for the identity and forgery charges, so at this point he is still in jail. So detectives questioned him again, and they asked him if he was familiar with the highway that Kiera was found on, and John informed them that he was familiar with that road. So detectives tell him that Kiera's body had been found on that road, and he tells them that he would like a lawyer. Now, on September 11th in 2018, 8 days after her body was discovered, John is charged with the murder of Kiera, and his bond was set at $1 million. So according to police, there was a witness that was unnamed, and the witness says, according to court documents, that John had a history of violence against Kiera and that they even noticed bruises on her body from John. They also stated that John would restrain Kiera by placing one hand against her upper chest and throat. Now, the witness would later be revealed to be her best friend, Destiny. Now, neighbors had actually witnessed John along with another guy walking in and out of Kiera's apartment with trash bags and loading them into the car the same day she went missing. Now, a sheet that matched Kiera's bedspread set was also found in the car, so did they use this sheet to wrap up her body? Detectives decide to pull her phone records, and they notice that 4 days after she disappeared, her phone as well as John's phone both connected to the same Wi-Fi router. They also discovered that the text messages from her phone were coming from her apartment after she disappeared. So obviously this makes John look extremely suspicious, but remember the text message that Destiny received from Kiera on August 4th? The text didn't come from Kiera, it came from John. Now, detectives also discovered that John was messaging a friend on Instagram about how police can use the Find My iPhone app to track Kiera's phone the same day he sent the text message from her phone to Destiny. According to court documents, not only did he send the text message from Kiera's phone to Destiny, John had a history of accessing Kiera's personal accounts, such as her Facebook, her bank account, and withdrawing money by utilizing her PIN. So, what would have been his reason for killing Kiera? Did she tell him that she may have possibly been pregnant and maybe was he upset about it? Her sister says that Kiera was thinking about moving back home to California and John had no job, no money, and living with Kiera and Destiny, so he knew that if she left, he basically would have nothing. So on September 14th of 2018, John was indicted by a grand jury for second-degree murder. Now he does plead not guilty. However, sadly, the case was thrown out due to reportedly there being inaccurate comments that were made by a detective. They also argued that there was new evidence that could clear John in Kiera's case. Now, on May 14th in 2019, 8 months later, there is a new grand jury as well as a new indictment for second-degree murder. However, in April of 2020, John's case gets dismissed yet again by the judge, and I can only imagine how frustrating this must have been for her family. So, according to the judge, the prosecution mishandled evidence. John's defense attorneys also argued that the state, the police, as well as prosecutors didn't investigate nor did they disclose silent witness records, which are anonymous tips that are sent in to law enforcement. Now, according to court documents, many of the anonymous tips that were made claim to have seen Kiera at different locations and times across the Phoenix, Arizona, Kingman, Arizona, and San Diego, California area from August 9th through August 16th in 2018. However, none of this information was presented to the grand jury nor to John's public defenders, and again, the judge dismissed the case. However, the judge dismissed the case without prejudice, which means the charges can be refiled against John if the Maricopa County Attorney's Office decides to do so. Now, John is still facing his other 2 charges. However, he is out of jail and under court supervision, and he's just freely walking the streets. Her family says that they want John to be held accountable for what he's done and they want justice for Kiera. Now, her family has kept her name alive and they also started the hashtag Justice for Kiera. Her mother also helps other victims of domestic violence and says that she doesn't want to see this happen to anyone else. Her mother also says her faith in God and knowing that she will see Kiera again someday in heaven is what has kept her going, and her family is still fighting and seeking justice for Kiera. Again, Kiera was only 19 years old when her life was mysteriously cut short. She had so much life ahead of her, and it's just frustrating that there's still no justice for her, and that's why I wanted to discuss her case so that we could spread awareness in the hopes of receiving justice for Kiera and bringing justice to her family as well. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this case, but that is all I have for you today. I hope everyone stays safe, and I will see you in the next one.